Hi, I'm Michelle.
I'm John.
And I'm George. And April's What's Neat starts right now.
The What's Neat Show is sponsored by Caboose, sharing our passion for trains since 1938. This is What's Neat for April 2019. I'm your host, Ken Patterson, and this month we do have a great show. First of all, we interview model railroad artist Rand Hood. That's right, after about a 14-year hiatus, Rand Hood is back in the hobby and shares with us plans to build a new layout. Michelle Kempema has an interview with Corinne Williams over at the Cumbres and Toltec Railroad. It's a treat to see the beautiful steam footage this month in that interview. Stephen M. Conroy, he shares with us some really nice drone footage above Columbus, Ohio during a sunset. It's absolutely beautiful visuals this month for the drone footage and What's Neat. George Bogatuik from Soundtracks shares with us an ES-44 locomotive from Athern that he tricks out with sound, but he also puts in it LED lights, wheel lights, ditch lights, emergency lights, headlights, you name it. He really tricks out with lights this month, and he kind of shares with us a little bit about how he went about doing that. We also have a great interview from Andy Edelman over at MTH Electric Trains. He's been in the industry for over 30 years. He's been in the trenches, and he gives us some insight and a really good interview this month for What's Neat. And so with that, that's the lineup for the show. If you all are fixing on going on vacation, and I know a lot of summertime plans are being made right now, be sure to check out Caboose in Lakewood, Colorado. I've had the chance to be out there a few times already this year, and it's such a treat to see one of the most magnificently stocked train stores in the United States. Also, if you've been watching our What's Neat This Week podcast, you know that's the way to keep up to date weekly on what's going on in the hobby. The What's Neat This Week podcast over at Ken Patterson's YouTube channel. It's got a lot of legs and a lot of viewers, and it's a lot of fun to produce for you every week just to support the best hobby in the world. And so with that, that's the lineup for April. Enjoy the rest of this month's show. For this segment of What's Neat, this is a real treat. Now, I know we talk about passion a lot in the show, and we throw that word around. It's almost a cliche. But today I'm experiencing my passion for trains, and that's model photography. And one of the mentors in this industry that seriously brought me along and told me there were better ways to do stuff visually was Rand Hood. Now I'm standing in front of a mural, and I'm standing right here next to Rand Hood, in fact. And this is a mural that was used to make the very famous Moffat tunnel shots that we're all familiar with that ran in Model Railroad magazine. Okay, and this is in fact the backdrop that was used to create that famous award-winning photograph. It's absolutely exquisite to be standing in front of this work of art. This is my passion. So Rand Hood, I know you feel the same excitement as I do being here and doing this as we're doing this right now, sharing the hobby with everyone else out there.
Well, this is just, it's a start over for me, and this was a salvage piece. It's just a big piece of masonite. So from the last layout, this was the Moffat tunnel section, and as we were tearing things out and deciding what to save, we decided that we wanted to redo the Moffat tunnel area. We didn't want to do it in the dead of winter. We like a little more of the fall look and skips of snow and shadows. So it's going to be a little more of a challenge where that snow is laying in the roadbed side shadows, things of that nature. So Karen and I made a decision that let's, we've been there and did that. Let's do something else. So this is what was saved. And there's one chunk of that whole layout that's left out in the other room. But we pretty much had to learn to just wipe the slate and start over rather than trying to incorporate things. We found it was just easier. So we decided we took some 1x4 and framed this and found one wall we could hang it on just to kind of keep us inspired. But part of the joy of doing the photographs back then was creating the scene and creating the mood, and at the same time Ken Patterson was out there doing it and kind of gave us that lesson of it's not just a bright sunny day. Look at, you got this cloud elements building. You taught us to look at atmosphere, And so when I was working on that whole sequence, I was always thinking what you're doing, and then you and I were kind of feeding off of each other. You know, this is kind of what I'm working on, and then you would be like, well, this is what I'm working on. Like, well, you know, I'd love that composition. And then, so.
I know, I'm on the phone, I'm there with you, buddy. And that's back when you lived in Chicago.
Yeah, it was easier for us to kind of interact at that point. And then, of course, we had our big summit meeting that there's still things that I think about that we discussed there. And one of them I thought of the other day was someday boxcars are going to come with the wrinkly sides when they weld them and they can't keep the stuff flat, that we're actually going to see that.
Right.
And back then, Ken said, you know what, for now I'm going to cover it. I'm just going to start doing some shadow work, and I'm going to make that happen now. And it
works. And Jeff Meyer has shown us how to do that, because he's taken it to the limit, and so has Michael Buddy. I've seen Michael Buddy do the shadow effect, where the top of the ripple collects the dirt, but the bottom part's clean. That's the ripple of the sheet metal.
Yeah.
So I know what you're talking about.
Well, that, and then also the game changing that Mike Buddy did. Now
Mike Buddy, yes.
I am an artist.
I know.
Well, I can't claim to be an artist, but I've been in art for all my life. But Mike Buddy comes out with using oil paints, and it was one of those, you had in one show, you said your aha moments are different than my aha moments.
Randy at the museum has the aha moments with the electronics. And his are different than ours. Yeah, I know. But they're all just as good.
So I'm looking at this article and I'm going, okay, 3 feet away is my box of oil paints going, well, I've got all these colors. What? I never put it together. And so here this brilliant man comes along, and the next thing you know, I'm just, you know, up to my knees in paint and just doing it and going, oh my God, this is incredible. Look what's happening on the roof. It's like, you know, thank you. But that was part of the big, when I came down to St. Louis, how the minds were just, we were just going nuts and just.
Right, the first time you came and visited me, my father brought you down for us to meet.
Yeah.
And that was a good day. We got photos of that. I do have photos. I think we talked about on your podcast interview that you were on.
Yeah, we showed that.
Showed photos. The one thing about your house, and you know, you design museums for a living, but as I look at the simplest part of the house where it may be otherwise boring, you build an alcove, you drop in some lights, you make it an interesting. Your art in model railroading transcends into your architecture and your business of museum design. I am standing in your art when we walk through here.
It's fine. It's all life, man. It's just how you see or how you perceive. But for us, everything is a space and how you interact with it. So when we designed the house, we kind of took a Victorian attitude with a little Frank Lloyd Wright and came up with Prairie Nouveau is what we call the style. But there's not a lot of squares. There's angles and things that happen, and you get this interaction, and you can kind of weave in and out.
Right.
But we do that with museums too, because we're concerned with the traffic flow. How can we make you go through this space without just marching up and down aisles?
Right, and still keep you there for a while.
Right. So we find ways to make it interesting. You know, I want you to weave this way, and I'm going to give you a little treat over behind you here, and I want you to just kind of get off in this little alcove and you know, have a few private moments, and then come back and join the mainstream. But and it's the same way, you know, right now on our layout design. It's kind of the same thing. The way
we're designing a layout now after a 14-year hiatus out of the hobby. You're coming back.
Yeah.
You're coming back, and you're designing a layout now.
Yeah.
I've seen the layout space. It's clean. It's fresh. It's open. Lots of electrical outlets.
A few more lights go up, and some cabinets for storage.
And is this going to be a standard gauge layout or a narrow gauge?
No, it's standard gauge. It deals with the belt line, Rock Island coming into North Yard in Denver.
Okay.
And then all that interaction and interchange, and then also out again to the Moffett Tunnel, Pine Cliff and Moffett Tunnel, into a staging room that heads to Bond, so we can get a lot of trains coming out of Salt Lake City, CNS interchange. So I started out as a Rock Island modeler, and being a native of Colorado, everybody wondered why, but the Rock Island did come in here out on the prairie, and I have relatives out there and spent a lot of time there. So love the prairie of Colorado. It's another favorite part of my love of this state. But when I went to Chicago and the Rock Island, I totally went to Rio Grande. And so now that I've come back here, I'm kind of marrying both of them and putting them back together because I do appreciate what both railroads had to offer.
That's awesome. Will we be able to follow you along as you build this layout?
Absolutely.
This
Yeah.
will be great.
This
This
has
is
been
going
fun.
to be a new adventure. Rand Hood on What's Neat. It's awesome, buddy.
Well, I appreciate it, Ken. I
So-
appreciate the love over the years for what you do and for what I do, and the fact that we work together. That's the one thing about model railroading is the camaraderie.
Yes.
It's like, I'm not going to keep a secret from this man because he's going to figure it out anyway.
I'm looking at your work. I'm studying it. It's the guy in the rear view mirror, right? Is that
Yeah.
me back there somewhere?
Yeah,
But
it's
it's
like-
awesome because sometimes we pass each other.
Yeah.
It's
we
like a
do.
long drive on the road.
You
We
do.
pass each other.
Oh,
back,
yeah.
but same thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of benchmarks that you put out in that hobby that I'm totally aware of.
Well, thank
And,
you for that.
so-
This is the best hobby in the world. And I'm telling you
Absolutely.
what, it's because of people just like Rand Hood.
Yeah.
Austin Allard, thank you for running camera for us. Great week here in Colorado. We're ending it tonight with this interview.
And a good snowstorm
A
again.
good snowstorm tonight. And that's going to end this segment here with Rand Hood. We'll follow up on excerpts of how the layout comes along, buddy.
All right.
Thank you for being on
Oh.
What's Neat.
Thank you, Ken.
All
This is
right.
fun.
I love
Thank
you, man.
I love you too.
This is Michelle Kempema from Colorado Model Railroad Museum for What's Neat this week, and I have my dear friend Corinne Williams from the Cumbres and Toltec Railroad. So Corinne, we have a lot of rail fans and model railroaders out there who love to ride trains, and I have to say I love your train a lot. So can you tell us a little bit about the train itself?
Sure, we are part of the old Denver and Rio Grande Western line. They created a scenic line of 64 miles. We do run historic steam locomotives. We also have the Friends of the Cumbres and Toltec who restore boxcars, flangers. We have a rotary locomotive for snowplowing and hope to get that up soon. So it's fun. It's experiencing the authentic West because it is the old equipment and not much has changed in the time that it's, from 1880s. It's pretty much the same. So
Yeah. I agree. That's my favorite part about this train is that you could actually get dirty. I love that when we got there, I could walk up to the locomotive and check it out, touch it, be a part of I just felt like I was part of the train, part of the crew. That's my favorite part about it. Now you have a special locomotive coming up, so let's talk about that.
So we have leased the 168 locomotive from Colorado Springs, and they have been working very diligently on restoring it. And so the hope is that locomotive and then a couple of historic cars will reenact the old Chili line. They can't actually do the Chili line, but that type of a thing where in 2020 we should have rides that they can ride the historic 168 in the historic cars.
That is fabulous. So you guys as model railroaders, you have clubs out there, and I know specifically one person in particular who books his own trip for his friends named Steve Watrous. Hi Steve. It's an idea. As a club, you could come out and book a whole car for your club and everybody come and ride the Cumbres and Toltec.
Right.
So especially if you're on your way to Utah at any point to see any big boys or NMRA's National Convention. So yeah. Anything else you want to tell us about the railroad?
It's even the people are authentic. So, everyone who works there loves the train. They love the history of the train. They love inviting people in as family. So it's definitely an experience. We do like to let people get a little dirty. But besides renting cars, you can actually rent the caboose, or we do have the fireman engineer school. And
you have a fireman engineer school?
we do.
I could learn to be a fireman.
You could.
Or I love this. I need to do this.
Yeah.
Model railroading is the greatest hobby in the world, but we get to play with real trains sometimes too, and I love that. And I love Corinne. She's my really good friend. So anyway, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
For this segment of What's Neat, I'm standing with Andy Edelman from MTH. And Andy, you've been doing shows for better than 20 years.
Let's talk about 30 to 40 years. I've been in the business. In 2020 will be my 40th year, 30th with MTH.
To make a long story short, you not only have a passion for trains, but you have a very intimate relationship with everybody in the industry, and you're quite respected. Tell us about how great it is working in this industry.
Well, it's a neat thing to do. I mean, you're doing model railroading, you're doing trains. People love trains. The people that are in the hobby love it. So you're making them happy. Occasionally you might disappoint them because something doesn't come in that they want, or you're not building the train that they want you to build, but generally you make people happy in this business, and that's a cool thing to do. I mean, so I've been doing it for almost 40 years and I never get tired of it. I do way too many different things, but that's the nature of the business, and you're on the road a lot. This is my 6th show in 9 weeks, so I'm getting tired.
Yes, and you're still smiling, baby.
I try, man, I try.
I'm telling you what, MTH is lucky to have a man like you.
Oh, I appreciate
Now,
that.
you have a passion for working at work. Do you do any trains when you clock out?
Not so much. You know, I'm there 10 hours a day, and when I play trains, I do it at the office.
Right.
And when I get home, I still do some work, but it's usually the boring kind, and I just don't have a chance to mess with it. And I enjoy it at work. I do the videos, I do photography, in addition to all my other duties. So I get up close and personal with this stuff, and I love doing it. But sometimes you got to get away from it when you get home. And
What's the favorite scale you make? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I think my favorite is probably the newest one that we do is S scale.
S scale.
And you know, S scale is realistic in the sense that it's 2-rail like HO, but it's bigger. And when you start to get old, you got to use the cheaters, man. I kind of like being able to put the stuff on the track. Yeah, so S scale, it's a cool scale. It's a small segment of our business. We obviously started with doing 10-plate reproductions in the 80s. O-gauge has been our primary business. We have several segments in the O-gauge market. HO is one of our faster growing ones, but S scale, of all the scales, I think is probably one of my favorites.
One thing I've seen you try in the last 3 years is you've tried to recreate a lot of these Christmas trains, or you've actually put string lights on trains. How's that working?
Well, sometimes I think it's a little too gaudy, but doggone, do those things sell. People love that stuff, and we've got buildings, we've got cars, we've got locomotives with those lights on. You can turn them off if you want to, but we're creating, you know, a holiday theme that people can do for their Christmas layouts, their temporary layouts, and even their full-time layouts, because you can turn those lights on and off, just like you'd see, you know, from Thanksgiving to middle of January in real life. So, you know, the thing about model railroading, Ken, is that you are in control of your empire. You're the man, right? You run it, and those Christmas lights, it's just another element. I'll give Mike Wolf, our president, all the props in the world for that, because he thought it was a pretty cool idea, and we kind of looked at him like he was a little bent. But darn, they sell, and so we keep doing it.
Mike Wolf, you are smart for having this man on board, and I'll tell you what, it is people like you, Andy, that make it good for all of us modelers, because you produce the stuff that we want. You are the reason why it's the best hobby in the world. You're one of the many reasons. Thank you for this few minutes.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Good to see you again, and we'll keep chugging along, as they say. It's a good thing to do, and I never get tired of it.
That's awesome, and that's this segment for What's Neat.
Hey guys, George from Soundtracks here, and on this segment of What's Neat, I'm going to show you where the modern bug has bit me. So as many of you guys know, I typically model 1978 Missouri Pacific. Well, thanks to our friends at virtualrailfan.com, I got addicted to watching some of the live rail cams around the country, most notably the one in Belen, New Mexico, which is actually watching the in and out of the Belen fueling racks, so you can see all the trains on the Transcontinental Railroad. Well, watching this, I started watching it late at night because of course I work during the day, so I don't have time to watch that kind of stuff. And I started noticing all of the cool lights that are on the modern locomotives. Things like step lights and courtesy walkway lights and so forth. So with the Tsunami 2, I decided, you know what, I can do this. So I got myself an Athearn Genesis Gevo and decked it out. Let's check it out in detail. So now let's take a closer look at this Gevo. So first off, to start, we have the headlight, of course, and we have our ditch lights. Now on the modern Gevos, they do not alternate in flash, so I was able to save a function output by combining the left and right ditch light. Now next up, we have our number boards. Now the number boards are illuminated, and with the Tsunami 2, I can take one of the hyperlight features and adjust the brilliance so that I can dim them down, so as you can see, they're not quite as bright as the headlight and the ditch lights. Next up is our truck lights. Now these are lights over the trucks that actually peer down onto the ground, so the engineer can look down on the ground and make sure that when he feels like he's moving, he's actually physically moving the train. Now there's one on each side on this locomotive, and it's just above the trucks. Now next up, we're going to take a look at the step lights and the walkway courtesy lights. Now here I've got all 4 step lights on the corners of the locomotive, and there's actually a light that shines above the walkways in front and rear of the platforms on the locomotive. There's one above the side step on the side of the locomotive, and there's actually one above the brake wheel on the other side of the locomotive. Now the last lighting effect that we've added to this one is the red emergency stop light. So when the locomotive goes into emergency, there's a red light in the cab. Now the train crew use this so that if they do have a problem with one of the locomotives in the consist, you can walk down the tracks and really quickly see which one has the red light in the cab, so you'll know which one to get up and address. Now with the Tsunami 2, we can actually trigger a lighting and sound effect, as you heard, with the emergency stop. Now with most DCC systems, the first press of the emergency stop is what's considered a local command, which means it is sent only to address 5807 in this case. So with that, we're able to trigger sound effects and lighting effects. So for those locomotives that have the red emergency gyro light on the front, you can trigger that now with the Tsunami 2. Now with all these cool lights on it, it wouldn't be doing very good if we didn't take a look at it in the dark. Now after we've turned off the lights, you can really now see how the step lights and those walkway courtesy lights really shine. You can see the one on the nose just below the headlight in between the 2 ditch lights. And you can really see the truck lights. Now with the Tsunami 2, you've actually got 2 brilliance registers, so you can adjust the brilliance of 2 different versions of lights. So with the Tsunami 2, you can have 2 different sets of brilliances. So you can have the number board and truck lights, for example, to 1 brilliance, while you have the step lights and courtesy lights set to a different brilliance. So this is unique features to the Tsunami 2, so that way when you're looking at this locomotive head on, it doesn't look like you've got 3 ditch lights coming at you. Well, that's all good, but what does it sound like? Now in this particular model, I've actually had access to our friends at scalesoundsystems.com, their new co-evolve speakers, and I've actually installed one of these to try it out. Now using the 7-band equalizer built in the Tsunami 2, we can really boost those low-end frequencies and decrease the high-end so you get more of an even sound. So let's take a listen. First we got to start it up, so we're going to press F5 so that the prime mover will start up. So now let's get it going. So now we're going to blow the horn, which will automatically trigger the bell. We're going to make sure our bell stays on for a little bit. We're going to go ahead and increase our throttle a little bit. and we're going to get going. Now the last thing I did to this was I actually hit it with a very light weathering. Put a little bit of thinned black and weathered black on the top, as well as some railroad tie brown flat available from Model Masters now, and some earth colors just to give it a little bit of a dust. So now one of the really cool things I found was from our friends at Highways and Byways. They actually make pre-cut sections of Scotch-Lite striping. So I took this and added it over the striping that is factory installed on the Athearn. So we're going to move this light a little bit and kind of show how that Scotch-Lite reflection really shows off on the side of that model. So now your nighttime scenes with the model are going to look fantastic, especially passing through some headlights. So this is the first of about a 4 or 5 unit contest. We'll see what I get, but I'm anxious to see how the rest of these turn out. Ken, thanks for sharing, and we'll see you next time on What's Neat.
All of the Model Railroad products seen in this episode of What's Neat are available through Caboose in Lakewood, Colorado, or order online at mycaboose.com.